The story of Terry McGinnis starts at his birth. We find out later in the Justice League Unlimited episode that Terry McGinnis is the biological son of Bruce Wayne. So when, of course, he wasn't born yet, his father believed he was getting just a routine flu shot, but he was actually injected with Bruce Wayne's DNA, which replaced his. And then also along with this, in the same episode, we learned that when Terry McGinnis was 5 years old, Amanda Waller did hire Phantasm to take out Terry McGinnis's parents. She didn't end up going through with it. She didn't think it was right, but we do later know that Terry McGinnis does have his own traumas. When he was about 8 or 9 years old, his brother was born who also had that same Bruce Wayne DNA. I'd say he's probably about 16 and a half, where he officially takes the new mantle of Batman and really gets Bruce Wayne's blessing. And then going into that spin-off movie with the Joker, Terry McGinnis turned 17 at this point. And I think really what's remarkable about this movie is we really see Terry McGinnis evolve the Batman role into his own. Really a much different personality for Batman. We see with his altercation with the Joker that he's much more taunting, he plays dirty, he fights dirty. And the Joker had really never seen anything like that from Batman and wasn't expecting that. And I think it really does great to add some new life and depth to the character. And really, even though obviously Bruce Wayne is in pretty much his headset, he still is adapting the role to his means. And then after this, going into the second and third seasons, I'd say the time period isn't really that clear, but I'd say it's about just going into his senior year of high school. So towards the end of that, he would turn 18. That's also when we see Terry McGinnis briefly start to join the Justice League. This would be in season 3. And then from here on out, Terry McGinnis is kind of like a participate when he wants to member, even leads the Justice League at some parts. And then I'd say going outside the show, because you did have that pretty abrupt stop at season 3 because they wanted to go into the Justice League following Batman Beyond. You really don't have a whole lot of insight as to what Terry McGinnis's life was like. We do know through some comics that at age 19, he started attending Gotham University and still continued his role as Batman, still continued helping out Bruce Wayne. We do have a little bit of a falling out with him and Bruce. And then Terry McGinnis goes to Nightwing or Dick Grayson to be his mentor for a little bit. And then his relationship with Dana Tan is a little bit off and on here as well. And you also have, going deeper into the comics, some instances of multiverses and time travel, but I'm just leaving that out. I think it gets a little bit too complicated when you look into that. That's both in the comics and a few cameos in different Justice League episodes. But I'd say really the last chapter of Terry McGinnis in the story is in that last finale or the epilogue in that Justice League show. That's where we learn through a kidney transplant that Terry McGinnis is an exact match to Bruce Wayne. That's where he does a DNA test and learns that Wayne is his biological father. That leaves Terry to ask a bunch of questions to both Bruce and then later breaking into Amanda Waller's residence, who was the brains of the operation and was also leading the Justice League, or was the government liaison for the Justice League, and really pulled a lot of strings behind the scene. And that's where she, of course, tells Terry McGinnis that it was her idea to implant that DNA. She picked Terry McGinnis's parents for being pretty close psychological matches to both Thomas and Martha Wayne, and she believed that society always needed Batman to keep its balance, to keep Gotham away from its crime. And even in the Justice League, Amanda Waller really believed that Batman was the best superhero and really was the best asset and was such a force of nature from his wits, his willpower. And that's why she really thought that Batman was a necessity to keep going. So she, of course, got the technology to implant Bruce Wayne's DNA, which she also acquired without Bruce Wayne's knowledge, to set up this whole project which was known as Project Batman Beyond. And so she arranged that flu shot. It didn't have anything to do with the death of Terry McGinnis' father at the beginning of the show. It was only when Terry was 5 years old that she wanted to mimic Bruce's tragedy. And she initially wanted to do this to Terry because she stated that it wasn't just his genetics that she believed could create the next Batman. It was also that similar trauma that really drives him to become that force of nature when taking on all of crime in Gotham. And she said that after all, it was really destiny that he ended up following in Bruce Wayne's footsteps and that he had his own natural tragedies that propelled him. But she also goes through a lot of themes with free will, such as Terry McGinnis making a much better life for himself as opposed to Bruce Wayne, because we see Bruce Wayne who has a falling out either by a lot of his friends or partners that have passed away, or just not really continuing that relationship, the people that are still around. So I think that's really what drives Terry McGinnis to take care of the people closer to him. He rekindles and apologizes to Bruce Wayne because he originally thought all of this DNA stuff was Bruce's idea, and then eventually proposes to Dana Tan after dating her for 15 years. So I really think that's a happy ending, and it also looks like just inferring that Terry now just takes Batman pretty much into his own hands. I don't think Bruce is really on the phone with him, watching everything he does. He's really independent in that role. So really, I'd say that's where the story closes, even though I'm sure Terry McGinnis had a wonderful life with Dana Tan, potentially having kids and continuing the mantle of Batman even beyond Bruce Wayne's eventual death. And now just my thoughts on his character as a whole. I really like Terry McGinnis because I think he brings a different dimension to Batman. You obviously have that coach and player role, but I'd say even outside of that, why I really like Terry McGinnis' character is because he has a different upbringing than Batman, isn't as well off, and has a little bit different trauma, does have the death of his father, but also doesn't live in a mansion, just lives in a nice apartment, and really learns a lot of his skills, even though he does get trained by Batman, really developed a lot of his skills on the street, developed a lot of his physical capabilities, being such a top-notch athlete. So I'd say while he isn't as smart as Bruce Wayne, he definitely is a lot more street smart. And that's really where he learned a lot of his fighting and his grit. And I really like the idea of him just having a little bit different style to Batman. Still follows his main rules of not taking anyone's life or using a gun, but he takes Batman's style into his own hands. He isn't as stoic as Batman isn't as professional with a little bit of that taunting. And I really thought that's an interesting take. And just the fact that it's someone new, I think that really works for this equation. What I think does hurt that a little bit is this whole DNA plot that was really cemented with the Justice League Unlimited episode. I almost like Terry McGinnis just being his own person because you already have the Son of Batman and other stories. So I think the Terry McGinnis role just outside of that genetic code or outside the Wayne family does work. But I will say I do like the epilogue or the finale and how they lay it out. I think that does work pretty well with the presentation of it. And I think another thing on top of the story that really gets neglected a little bit is Terry's younger brother Matt McGinnis, because he also would have that same DNA. Again, speaking to the DNA part, if we are having a Batman Beyond that does have that same cloning of DNA, it would only be half, of course, because he still has his biological mother. I would have liked to see Matt maybe eventually learn of this and start training and becoming Terry McGinnis's Robin. And then he also could carry on the mantle of Batman as well. So really, I think these are just a few different ideas for the future. If there ever was a revival or a reboot of Batman Beyond, I think you could just do the whole route where it's just Terry McGinnis being someone completely new. So really, I think Batman Beyond is an excellent addition to the lore and to the story of Batman. So that's just my 2 cents on that. Feel free to let me know what you really liked about Terry McGinnis's character, what you liked about his life, or just any comments you have on that. Really appreciate you guys watching, and I'll see you later.